Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, September the 17th, 2024. So it's happened again. There's been another attempt on Donald Trump's life, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. Okay, I'm also going to talk about the astrology and the I Ching for today. But yes, I do want to talk about this attempt on Donald Trump's life. And the person who has been arrested is Ryan Wesley Routh. And Ryan Wesley Routh, he is someone who apparently can't stand Donald Trump. He's also a big fan of Ukraine. He was apparently on record as saying, I am willing to fly to Krakow and go to the border of Ukraine to volunteer and fight and die. Can I be the example? We must win. So, that's just a reminder that, all this Ukraine stuff is driving some people crazy. Everyone is, not everyone, but governments and people who should know better are obsessively pushing this Ukraine narrative. And some people are being wrapped up in it. And, it's kind of stochastic terrorism. So stochastic terrorism is an act where you do something or you say something which increases the chances of a terrorist attack happening or acts of violence happening. And it's normally associated with right-wing populists, supposedly, inciting violence. But in this case, I think it's about the left. It's about perhaps the neocons, many Democrats using language to stir things up. And Trump is supposedly skeptical about the Ukraine war. I don't think he is, actually. I think that he seems to be overall pretty supportive of Ukraine vis-a-vis Russia, but still he's not supportive enough, and his skepticism makes him a bit of a target, I think, and so he is a victim of stochastic terrorism. I think in the previous assassination attempt on July the 13th, it's people's vitriol against Trump is just encouraging this kind of event. And it's not just in the United States. I mean, look at Robert Fico. Robert Fico was skeptical. The Prime Minister of Slovakia was skeptical about Ukraine and wanted to rethink Slovakia's approach to the war in Ukraine. And as a result, he took a bullet. Or maybe he took more than one bullet because someone was influenced by all this pro-Ukraine rhetoric and wanted to kill Fico. So, that's the kind of environment we're in. So anyway, as far as the shooter is concerned, Ryan Wesley Routh, I do know what time he was born. Sorry, I do not know what time he was born. I do know what day he was born. And that information doesn't seem to be widely available at the moment, but I did find it on the North Carolina Department of Adult Corrections, because a long time ago he'd had a run-in with them, and his birth date seems to be permanently accessible. So that's fortunate. So yes, I do want to look at Ryan Wesley Routh's horoscope. I want to also, of course, look at Donald Trump's horoscope and consider what was going on at the time of this event. I mean, it was, in many ways, there were some very remarkable things going on in terms of Routh's chart, Trump's chart, what was going on at the time. And it does make me feel that kind of fate is at work here. I know Trump has gone through a bad patch since the debate, but I think this may turn out to be quite fortunate for him. This may be a turning point. Perhaps. I mean, as you know, on several occasions I've said that I do believe that on November the 5th, Donald Trump will be re-elected. It's, my forecast about him being re-elected, I should say something about this. When I looked at 4 years ago, just before the 2020 election, I was 100% sure that Biden was going to be elected. It was absolutely certain. If Biden had not have been elected, it would have been back to the drawing board time. It would have been it would have been a technique, an astrological technique I was using, but should have provided me with a certain result. Wasn't working, and I would have been really, really upset in the sense that it would have undermined an astrological technique I was using. This time round, I don't have that feeling of total gut certainty, but at the same time, I think if you look at everything balanced together, you look at the overall balance, I think from my perspective, it seems very, very likely that Trump is going to win. If I'm wrong, I think I'll know where I went wrong. It won't be the fault of astrology. It would be my fault for getting the balance, getting things, overemphasizing some things, underemphasizing other things. But overall, as you know, I do believe that Donald Trump is going to win in November. So before I look at Ruth and Trump and what was happening on the golf course, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, September the 17th, 2024. Now, just a reminder, if you enjoy this video, I'd be really, really happy if you were to like it. And if you're not subscribed, I would be over the moon if you would subscribe, because it does make a big difference to the channel, or so I'm told. Okay, so let's look at what's happening today. So here is a chart for today, Tuesday, September the 17th, and you can see that the moon is in Pisces. The moon is solidly in Pisces. Regardless of your time zone, that's where it is. And that's nice, at least in isolation. The moon in Pisces is very emotional, it's flexible, it can respond well to external events, and it's a bit sensitive as well, because it's in a water sign. But the moon is not just in Pisces, it's making a conjunction to Saturn. And that moon conjunct Saturn does change the nature of the moon to some extent. Yeah, the emotions are still there, but at times it may be difficult to express our feelings. They may not come to the surface too quickly, or even if they do come to the surface and we do start to express our feelings, we may feel that the environment isn't right. And so there may be a sense that we have to repress some of our feelings or keep quiet about them. Perhaps we'll take the view that other people aren't interested, or we may get negative feedback. So that's one thing going on. And of course it is the build-up to a partial eclipse. Now this partial eclipse, if you're in the Americas, it's going to happen this evening. If you're in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to talk more about the partial eclipse tomorrow, Wednesday. I mean, one reason for that is because I think I want the focus of this video to be the assassination attempt on Trump. But don't worry, I will be talking about the eclipse tomorrow. I know that sounds as if I'm leaving it a bit late, and I haven't given you much preparation for that, but so my apologies for that. But we certainly have this build-up. The moon is at 19 Pisces. It's applying to an opposition of the sun at 25 Virgo. I don't want to spend too long talking about the full moon, but I think that we get a sense that there is an oppositional situation coming up. There's us and them, or perhaps we're dealing with facts that we don't really feel happy about. How can we integrate the truth with our everyday being? It can be hard work. And yes, with a full moon, it can be about the truth and seeing the truth. And, it's also the time when a waxing moon turns into a waning moon. And so you could argue, if you haven't done it now, maybe you've missed your chance with the full moon, because the waxing moon is fortunate, the waning moon is not so fortunate. So the waxing moon, when the moon is getting bigger, it's a kind of a growth cycle. It's a growth part of the cycle. The waning moon is the sort of the decline of the cycle. So maybe if you're planning on doing something important, maybe it's not the right time to do it. And also, Mercury is starting to move towards an opposition of Saturn. It's a lot of the optimism, perhaps. We had this trine between Venus and Jupiter. That trine between Venus and Jupiter is still very much there. It still gives us hope. It gives us optimism that things can be better. But that Venus trine Jupiter is starting to wear a bit thin now, and perhaps we're going to be more influenced by that Mercury opposition Saturn. Mercury opposition Saturn is about taking life more seriously, seeing the downside rather than the upside. And just remember, at the end of a week or into next, just at end of week, beginning of next week, I think it's the 23rd, Venus goes into Scorpio, and there we see Venus in such a wonderful position. Its position will collapse from being really strong, but perhaps the strongest it's been all year, to being in Scorpio, the sign of its detriment. So that's something to, how shall I put it, look forward to, maybe. Anyway, I always try to be positive and upbeat, don't I? Yes. Okay, so that's perhaps the main stuff going on today. Also, the moon does make a square to Jupiter. So moon makes a conjunction to Sun, then it makes a square to Jupiter. Moon square Jupiter, it's like, I think some of us may be actually very, very keen to be as positive as possible. And as a result, there might be a certain sense of exaggeration. So you need to watch out for that. I mean, it's not going to help, is it? I mean, you might want to spend money, do something fun, go out just to cheer you up. Is it going to work? I suppose it might in the short term, but don't spend money you can't afford with the moon square Jupiter. So that is the geocentric picture for today. I just want to quickly look at the situation at noon in Sydney, because there is a difference. So remember, if you look at noon in New York today, the moon is at 19 Pisces. If we go to Sydney for today, the moon is at 10 Pisces. So if you're in Sydney, that moon Saturn conjunction is still there, and I think that in a way, if you're in Sydney, and when I say Sydney, I mean if you're in Australia or New Zealand or East Asia, as the day progresses, the moon will be moving towards a conjunction of Saturn. So perhaps that moon-Saturn opposition is going to be a little bit stronger in Australia and New Zealand and East Asia, maybe the Philippines or Japan, than if you're in, say, Europe and America. Also, I talked about the moon square Jupiter when I was just looking at the New York chart. I think that moon square Jupiter is not really going to be much of a feature for you if you're in Sydney. So I don't think there's so much in danger of sort of overindulgence and overexpenditure if you're in Australia or New Zealand. That's something you might experience tomorrow. But it doesn't matter in a broad sense, because regardless of whether you're in New York or New York or Australia or New Zealand, still the moon is very much in Pisces. Now, turning to the heliocentric picture for everyone, this isn't just for one geographical location. I mean, I'm setting it for New York, but from a heliocentric point of view, things don't move so quickly. I mean, it's a moon we have to really be concerned about in terms of time zone. So turning to the heliocentric picture, here we go. This is, of course, where the sun is placed at the center of things, where it should be, and there is still a Mars-Uranus conjunction. So that heliocentric Mars-Uranus conjunction was, of course, very much a feature of the weekend, and of course, Trump was nearly a victim of another assassination attempt with that Mars-Uranus conjunction over the weekend. And okay, that Mars-Uranus conjunction is starting to weaken now. It's not it's not as strong as it used to be, and I think we still have to take into account of it. We still need to take it into account. I mean, things can happen quickly, and we don't want to be impatient, and we have to be careful with technology. And if we're driving, we just mustn't be in too much of a hurry. I suppose that's the main thing going on heliocentrically. Might be worth noting that the Earth is making a conjunction to Neptune. In other words, the Sun is making an opposition to Neptune if you're looking at the thing from a geocentric perspective. So with Earth conjunct Neptune, there is a sort of a growing sense of confusion and not being aware about what's going on. And at the end of a week, this Earth-Neptune conjunction will be exact. And so, we might feel that we don't fully know what's going on, and there's scope for deception. And the Earth is actually also making a sextile to Mars. Now, that might be positive, but the Earth sextile Mars is quite an assertive, fairly aggressive aspect. It just may say that there is action out there. People are trying to make things happen, but I don't know. It's probably fairly general, and we may not pick up on it. Though, perhaps if you're, Mars, if you're, for example, a Mars-ruled sign, in other words, Aries or Scorpio, you might pick up on that Earth square Mars. Even, you might just feel that there's something you have to do, something you feel you have to sort out. But it could affect all the 12 signs, but perhaps particularly Aries and Scorpio. So, aside from the lingering effects of that Uranus-Mars conjunction, I don't think there's a great deal to report from a heliocentric perspective. So I'm now going to look at the 12 signs and do my forecast for the 12 signs for today, which is September the 17th, Tuesday, September the 17th, 2024. So here goes. These are my forecasts for today. That's the wrong chart. That's a heliocentric chart. I need to look at the normal chart. There we go. Okay, so these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, September the 17th, 2024. Aries. Aries, I think it's another day when you want to bide your time. I don't think that there's anything you absolutely have to do, and I think if possible you should be keeping a fairly low profile. I mean, you don't necessarily have to meet people. I mean, you might want to meet people, you might want to go places, but is it really worth it? Perhaps you'll just be wasting your time, and instead a bit of concentration on your own psychology might be a good idea. Thinking about yourself and perhaps what's been holding you back, and perhaps some of your fears. I mean, I'm not saying you have to confront your fears in a dramatic way, but I think if you're honest with yourself, you do have a few concerns which maybe need to be addressed. And I suppose it's not just the fact that the moon is making a conjunction to Saturn. It's also that we've got this build up to a full moon, and that means that you just maybe don't quite have the confidence that's normally associated with your sign. Now, don't worry. Tomorrow the moon moves into Aries, and I think that things will change very quickly. So perhaps it's a day when you do have to be self-aware and don't be overly pessimistic. Pessimism doesn't really suit the Aries nature, but instead of being pessimistic, it's just about being realistic, and Aries just understanding some of the things that might be holding you back. Now, that does not mean that it's a day when you should be sort of hiding and feeling that you can't do anything at all, because from a heliocentric view, the Earth is making a sextile to Mars. And so this Earth sextile Mars indicates that whatever you feel, you do have a connection with the Earth, and the connection is dynamic. So if there are specific things you don't like, then you can take specific actions to change the situation. But I think it's important to focus on the specifics rather than to try to, be active in lots of different places at once, because you'll just feel overwhelmed. So perhaps you need to ask yourself, Aries, what is the number one thing that's bothering you? Something that's bothering you right now, which you can sort out right now. So that is perhaps something you also you should be thinking about. And at the same time, for some Arians, you might actually be able to have fortunate connections with bureaucracy and government. I mean, I know one doesn't associate bureaucracy and government with good fortune. Well, okay, you might be working for government, of course that would be great, but it seems that if you interact with government departments, the local bureaucracy, may not be government departments, council departments, city departments, dealing with that kind of thing. I think that your enthusiasm, I mean, I know that you have limited amounts of enthusiasm today, but you'll have enough enthusiasm to actually get results. And so if you have a view about what you want from a government department, or perhaps your city, or I suppose it could be a private company that you have to deal with, I don't know, maybe about utility bills or whatever it is, I think there is a possibility of having fortunate contacts with them. So if you have been meaning to get in touch with some department, I don't know, I suppose in the US that might be the Inland Revenue, that would be the Inland Revenue in the UK, or the IRS in the US, or some organization like that. Could be a council, whatever, city council, someone providing services, I don't know, whatever it is. Then I think you can be successful. You can achieve what you need to achieve. And, as I said, if you work for the government, or if you work for local government even, then I think it can actually be quite a good day. Taurus, just a reminder, Venus continues to be in an absolutely great position. Venus, it's in Libra, it's in its own sign, it's in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. That trine between Venus and Jupiter is still there, it's still operational. So it's going to be a good day, and you're going to benefit from Venus's fortunate position. I mean, for the rest of the week. So maybe you don't have to overanalyze things. But if we want to get down to the specifics of today, I think you are able to, have a useful social life, if that's what you want. Maybe not a fun social life, but I think a useful one, when you can be yourself, and you will understand understand other people, and I think you'll understand the rules. And I think that every social interaction does have rules, and that there are limits to what you can do, to what the other person can do, to what the group can do, and you do understand the rules, and I think that you're able to create sort of better relations perhaps with some of your friends and associates. And yeah, I think the ground rules will be clearly laid out, and at the same time, if you feel that a friendship has gone too far or is starting to get in your way, to be irritating perhaps, I mean, you know how it is, sometimes you befriend someone and they just keep getting in touch with you, or perhaps you keep getting in touch with them, and it just there's something a little bit obsessive about it, and the boundaries are starting to slip. I think now is a time when boundaries can be very much restored. So there is a serious note to that, and also, you have to think about what you're good at and whether or not what you're good at is being appreciated. And I think this is especially the case as we've got this run up to the full moon. Okay, the full moon may not be until tomorrow. It depends where you are, whether it's this evening or tomorrow. But this full moon perhaps puts a spotlight on what makes you special, and also how much respect people have for what makes you special. Some people might not respect your time, for example, or they may feel that you should basically make yourself put yourself at their disposal, all the time, and that's obviously not something you want to do. And it's not just because generally you are wasting your time, it's because potentially you are being disrespected. And what is being disrespected is the things that make you special, because there are things that make you special, and I think the focus really is on them today, and you need to give them everything you've got. Especially now when you've got the Sun and Mercury in Virgo. It's very nice that the Sun and Mercury are both in Virgo, which from a sign which from a Taurian perspective is very creative. But Sun and Mercury are not going to be in Virgo forever, and so while you've got this Virgo emphasis in your chart, you do want to make the most of it, and you don't want it being spoilt by other people placing endless demands on you. That's not going to be fun. But this should not take away from the fact that, as I said at the beginning of this piece on Taurus, is that Venus is in a very strong position. That means you are in a very strong position, and you are able to get your way. And now, there may be a cost to getting your way, that's true, but if you don't like something, you absolutely do not have to put up with it. And I think that's going to be the case for the rest of the week, because while Venus is so strong. So I suppose kind of what I'm suggesting is this window of strength may not last forever, and so again, I think it's just very important that you're able to take advantage of it. Gemini, I get the impression that in some respects you're quite serious today. I think that there are definitely things you want to do, and you feel that you perhaps need to do them now, and you do understand that it's hard work. Nothing is easy. And that comes about because we've got a conjunction between the Moon and Saturn. Now, Moon-Saturn conjunctions can sometimes be difficult, but I think in your case and in this case, I think the Moon conjunct Saturn can give you a sense of discipline and focus, and that's sometimes difficult for Geminis. Geminis can find it very difficult to focus. I'm a Gemini. I've got my sun in Gemini. I know how difficult it is to concentrate on something for a prolonged period of time. But I think you can really benefit from this moon conjunct Saturn, provided you don't allow yourself to be distracted. And I think there will be distractions, because there is a full moon and Mercury is starting to make an opposition to Saturn. But you have to get these distractions in context. They perhaps are about things that are important, but in the right place. And I think that's what matters. There is a place and a time for doing something, and there's a place and a time for doing something else, and you don't want to mix them up. And perhaps that's a real challenge today. So if you had, if you're looking at, I don't know, what you're planning on doing mid-afternoon, for example, there's nothing special about mid-afternoon. If you'd said, I don't know, between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., for example, today you're planning on doing this, that's great. But what if something comes in and tries to distract you, saying, no, you should be doing something else? Then priorities are being mixed up. And what you don't want is, for example, perhaps domestic pressures to be mixing up with, for example, business or career or social pressures. And when things lose their place, and when the categorization starts to break down, then you're in trouble, because everything gets mixed up and you start to feel really frustrated because you can't achieve what you feel you should be able to achieve. So that could be quite difficult for you. So you need to have, I think, a certain amount of discrimination. And we have to be very careful with this word discrimination. By discrimination, of course, I'm talking about prioritizing things and discriminating between what should be done right now and between things that can be done later. That's what I mean by discriminating. And so you have to discriminate between the different pressures and how you use your time, and just be very, very focused. And there is certainly a time for listening to your family and for considering what's going on at home. But you don't want your family and your home to just be overwhelming, to take over your life and squeeze out the other things that you should be concentrating on. And Gemini, I should also say that when you want to be today, you can be very, very focused. You can be actually obsessively focused. And maybe that's what you should actually be trying to do. Take something you regard as important, you give it your time, then you start to give it your focus and your energy, and you give it everything, and something very powerful could happen there. So it's not a very Gemini thing. I mean, I know you're not a Scorpio, but maybe it's a day when Geminis should try to pretend to be a Scorpio. Get obsessed about something, but get obsessed about the right thing. Get obsessed about something that is important, that could help you in terms of your future and what you're trying to sort out for yourself, and just give it everything. And other people might not like it, but you're doing it for you, and it's okay to do it for you. Cancer. The moon is completely in Pisces today. Absolutely no doubt about that. And the moon is making a conjunction to Saturn, and we've got a build up to a full moon. So the moon is perhaps under a little bit of pressure. And of course there's moon opposition Mercury. So from a Cancerian perspective, I think that that's something that needs to be worked through. The moon is a planet that is very important to you, and so the condition of the moon does matter. And I think it's important that you don't allow yourself to be pressured too much, and you need to look after yourself and, I suppose, nurture yourself. The moon is in a water sign, and you want to be able to an extent, relax and not allow yourself to be, just be overwhelmed by what's going on. And, the full moon is coming up. The full moon may be this evening, it may be tomorrow, depending on your time zone. But with the full moon coming up, you're feeling that things are changing, and your own moods might change, because as I always say, Cancerians can be quite sensitive to the lunar cycle. So you might alternate between, feeling, very positive that things are moving, and then on the other hand, there could be a sense of sort of negativity, and that you're not being supported enough. So you also are going to need, I think, a certain amount of distance. If you're too close to things, then you just could be just knocked out by them. You just might not be able to deal with them. But if you have a bit of distance so that you can get some perspective on things, then Cancer, I think the day is just going to be really so much easier. And so perspective and distance and trying to put things in a sort of a broader framework might be a good idea. So, for example, if someone is bothering you, is irritating you, asking for things, don't get too close to this person. Stand back and ask where this person and their complaints and their irritating influence, where it fits in, and that might sort of help you. And with all of this stuff in water, there is quite a lot of stuff in water at the moment. Saturn's in Pisces, Moon is in Pisces, Mars is in Cancer. So we've got 3 traditional planets in water signs. So I think that you will have a certain rapport with the water, and I mean being close to water without being overwhelmed by it. Of course, I understand that there's flooding in Central Europe, so if you're in Central Europe, you've probably absolutely had enough of water, and water is not going to be at all nurturing for you. But I suppose it depends. But unless you're in a flood zone, then a certain proximity to water could be quite soothing for you. I mean, I think in general it always is, because you are a Cancerian, but I think today it could be especially useful. And also, I should say, we have this build up with the full moon, build up to the full moon. I don't think today you want to get too obsessed with irrelevant facts. I mean, even facts that are relevant, you perhaps don't necessarily want to get overwhelmed by them. Because if you have to worry about this, and you have this thing to be concerned about, and another thing to be concerned about, and you've got to look up this, and you've checked out something on the internet, and you don't like what you read, it could drive you crazy. And so what you need, Cancer, is you just need a broad perspective. You don't need to worry about, the small details. Now, finally, Cancer, there is a conjunction between the Moon and Saturn, and this conjunction between the Moon and Saturn, there are different ways of dealing with this conjunction. I mean, you could see it as being something negative, because Saturn is sort of holding you back, it's restricting you. But then on the other hand, Saturn can represent another person, and it can relate to relationships. And so with that conjunction between the Moon and Saturn, I think that there may be one particular person who you are very close to over the course of the day, and you can feel their influence. And this influence may be good, it may be bad, or it may be what you make of it. There are, it's true, some people who could be really restrictive, and they may be cramping your style, in which case you should take the appropriate measures. But there are going to be other people who are going to be responsible, and they're going to actually be quite protective, and you may actually feel good being close to them, because they are providing you with a structure. And so what we're really doing here is we're seeing the two sides of Saturn. Is Saturn about providing you with structure and protection, or is Saturn just holding you back, is restricting you, is cramping your style? So how is Saturn working? And you need to see that in the context of relationships and of the fact that today there is a conjunction between the moon and Saturn. Leo, there is a full moon. Okay, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, and I think this full moon is going to have some impact on you. It may remind you that there are important things which need your concentration. These important things might relate to money. I mean, this could be a financially orientated full moon coming up, where you start to see the truth about some aspect of your finances. And I suppose when you see the truth, okay, that might not be necessarily good news, but if you see the truth, then you're in a position where you can take action. And so I would have said with the full moon, you should not be trying to escape the truth, and you need to be ready to sort of dig deep. Anything to do with money, finances, joint finances, trusts, wills, anything where there's complicated small print, read the small print. And you might not, I don't think you're going to want to do it, but I think you probably should do it, because if you make the effort, there are things that you're going to discover, and I think that that's going to be useful. I mean, it may not be nice at the time, but at least you're going to be forewarned, and that gives you'll have an opportunity to make some changes. Perhaps the small print or the rules can be changed, or the clauses can be changed. If you're dealing, if you're dealing with a trust or a legacy or something, maybe, things can perhaps be changed. But also it's about being aware of the implications of small print, of the details. It might not seem important now, but soon enough I think it will become important. So now with this full moon, which is exact today and tomorrow, you do have a chance to change things, perhaps, or perhaps to change your own behavior, and perhaps to change your own priorities. And so I think it actually could be very useful, even if it doesn't feel particularly pleasant at the time. And on a related note, Leos are just going to be very aware of the world in which they live, and you're going to be aware of the linkages, and you can see that what happens in one place is going to influence another place, and in the end that could influence you. Now, there's not much you can do to change the world, but Leo, you can certainly understand the world, and by understanding the world you can start preparing for changing conditions. And I think that is going to be very important, something that you really can do. So do have your eyes open, particularly when it comes to things that you really don't want to know about. If you don't want to know about it, if you feel yourself avoiding something because it just seems too much effort, you don't want to be bothered with it. If you feel that sense of resistance in you, then that is a sure sign, I think, that this is something that you really should be engaged with. I think it really is going to matter, and I think that there's a sense in which the truth is available, and it's available for you. But just because the truth is available doesn't mean to say that you're actually going to be able to actually take advantage of this truth. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, I think that people are not always going to be especially forthcoming today. They might be holding some things back, or it might feel that they're holding things back. And it's not that you have to ask them questions. I think that you can actually start to understand the truth of something just by looking at people's behavior. So, do focus not just on what people say, but what they don't say, and also look at people's body language, because this could give you important clues about what they're really thinking and feeling, and perhaps also it could give you clues about what they're going to do next. But yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to ask people questions. You can ask yourself questions. You can look for answers to questions in an impersonal way through research, whether it's on the internet or going through documents or whatever. But actually asking people questions, I'm not convinced that's the right approach, because I think you might then get nowhere, or worse still, you might arouse suspicion, and I don't think that's something that you actually want to do. Virgo, we've got a build up to a full moon. This full moon might happen today, might happen tomorrow, depends on your time zone. In fact, it's a partial eclipse. So, we've got the moon in Pisces, sun in Virgo. And so with this full moon, I think that you're going to be fairly aware of other people and their potential influence on you. I think that's going to be important. And you'll be thinking perhaps about issues of freedom and control. Are you a free spirit? Are you able to do what you want? Or is it the case that your freedom of action is being seriously restricted? And that relates to the fact that the moon is conjunct Saturn. In fact, Mercury, your ruler, is starting to make an opposition to Saturn. And so the question is, what do you do about the situation? You can take the view that hard work and restriction are in some ways fortunate, that there's something that has to happen, that in some ways you're becoming a better person. Perhaps you need to be structured, and there are outside forces that are helping you to structure yourself. On the other hand, there are some people out there who are just not helpful. They perhaps are taking you for granted, and Virgos can be taken for granted. Virgo is a service sign. It can be a service sign. It likes to do things to help. It's very, very good often at doing things for other people. That's nice, but it can be taken too far, and you just may feel that you're not being respected. And if that's the case, you then have to act appropriately. That might be about giving someone a piece of your mind, or it might be just removing yourself from the situation. I mean, that is absolutely possible. And you shouldn't forget, Virgo, that Mercury is in Virgo. I mean, Mercury is your ruler. It's in Virgo. Mercury is actually well placed in Virgo. So that does give you a fundamental strength. And as the day progresses, I do think that strength will intensify. And it's because the Mercury is starting to make a square to Jupiter. Now that square to Jupiter may be more sort of later in the day, or perhaps into tomorrow. But with Mercury square Jupiter hitting, important signs in your chart, it's Mercury's obviously in Virgo, but Jupiter is in Gemini, a very high-profile status sign in the Virgo horoscope. With Mercury square Jupiter, it's a time when you can imagine things and you can have a vision, in spite of all the restrictions, everything going on around you, or people trying to hold you back, people telling you what to do. You still have a broader vision that goes beyond restriction, allows you to go above and beyond everything holding you back, and you're able to tune into what it's all about, what you are all about. And I think that if you can just keep hold of that fundamental ambition that should be burning inside you, certainly since the end of May, Jupiter has moved into Gemini. That does put the focus on you and what you want to achieve. And I think that over the next day or two, you can sort of move beyond everything trying to hold you back. And so I think that is something very fortunate. And at the same time, Virgo, you do have a lot of power at your disposal. It's not just about the fact that Mercury is in Virgo. It's also the fact that you're able to have intense focus that allows you to bring to bear all of your energy, everything you've got, onto a single point. Now, that could be dangerous. If you focus everything on one thing, it could just be overkill. And I suppose sometimes Virgos can go into overkill mode because they just get obsessed. But a little bit of obsession actually today may not be such a bad thing, because obsession allows you to ignore the distractions. Yeah, there might be people telling you to do things, there might be people demanding your attention, but there can be a moment where you just are able to ignore everything and just concentrate on what really matters. And in that way, you can cover a lot of ground very quickly, and there may actually be a sudden breakthrough, and you get a real sense that you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing, and that actually nothing can stop you. Libra. Just a reminder, Libra, that Venus continues to move through your sign, and it's very strongly placed. Mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn. Venus is still trine Jupiter. Now, that trine between Venus and Jupiter is not as strong as it was over the weekend, but it's still very much there. So, Libra, take advantage of it all. Venus is not going to stay in Libra forever. And in fact, at the end of the week, I think it's on the 23rd, is that a Monday, I think? On the 23rd, Venus moves into Scorpio, and things do change very quickly. And so, Libra, do take advantage of things, while things are going your way. Okay, I understand that right at the end of the week we've got the autumnal equinox. Certainly in the northern hemisphere it's the autumnal equinox, and with the sun moving into Libra, that does bring its own advantages and its own possibilities. But still, I just don't want you to waste the opportunities that are around right now, because yes, you are in a strong position and you're able to make things happen, and you can really look after yourself. And so if there's anything you want to happen and you've been holding back, perhaps you hadn't wanted to upset people, or you hadn't wanted to cause a disturbance. Sometimes you just have to be quite assertive about it, and now that might be the time. Though, of course, looking at the specifics of what's going on today, we've got the build up to a full moon. In fact, it's a partial eclipse. That happens tonight or tomorrow. So it is coming up, and so right now you may not feel as if you want to be doing anything. You may not feel that it's the right time to make waves. I suppose I can understand your point. Things just might seem a little bit slow right now, and you might feel that everything has to be in the right place, and it's not in the right place. And this full moon is perhaps showing you that things just are not as they should be, and you might think you just have a lot of tedious things to sort out, and you'll never be able to get them together, and that could turn into a situation where the week just flies by and nothing gets achieved. Nothing gets achieved in the big sense. The small things maybe get sorted out, but the big things don't. And I suppose that is perhaps a danger. Not being able to see the wood for the trees. You focus on one small thing, another small thing, and in the end you miss an opportunity which is really close by. So do open your eyes and try to understand what is available, and at the same time be open to surprises. It could be like sort of mental surprises. You could get a surprise about what you're thinking, or by something you say, or perhaps something other people. Maybe it could be something someone else says. But you do have a very active mind, and it's perhaps your active mind that can really, I won't say save you today, because I don't think you're in real trouble. I don't think you need to be saved, but it's perhaps your active mind can be on the lookout for opportunities, because there are opportunities, and opportunities that can come quickly, and they just won't be in the places you expect. It might just happen that you're talking to someone, and you talk about something, and then suddenly something really hits you, and you see that there's something you have to do, or something you discover, some fact that you discover, and it really surprises you. And as a result of this discovery, that leads you to be taking action. And I think that you can take action. Okay, you may not want to take action today, or perhaps even tomorrow, maybe. But maybe you have to wait until the moon goes into Aries. But still, waiting in general is not a good thing to be doing. There's never a right time. Never ever a right time, and never ever a perfect time. And you sometimes have to take what you've got. It's it's like what I do with electional astrology. Part of what I do with electional astrology is electing a time to do something, and people want to know when is the perfect time to, I don't know, get married, move into a house, go on a trip or a journey. They ask this question, but there is never a perfect time. I try to find the best time, but it's never perfect. And if you wait for the perfect time, it's perhaps never going to happen. And going back to what I said at the beginning, Venus is in a very good position at the moment, so perhaps now is the perfect time. Okay, we can worry about the details of a full moon, or Mercury moving to an opposition of Saturn or whatever, but maybe we shouldn't be worrying about the details. You have to, if you've been waiting to do something and you just feel the time is not right, then the time is never going to be right. And so perhaps you should work out what needs to be done right now, and just not leave it too long. And Venus is still trine Jupiter. Venus trine Jupiter was exact over the weekend. Of course, Venus is your ruler. Venus is the lesser benefic. Jupiter is a greater benefic. That Venus trine Jupiter is good. It allows you to see things from a new perspective, and once you start seeing things from a new perspective, you start being able to tune into possibilities. So I think I have to say, be optimistic. Be as optimistic as you possibly can be without drifting into the world of fantasy. We don't want to have fantasies, but be optimistic. Consider what can happen. And Libra, just consider the possibility that it can happen today if you want to make it happen. Scorpio. Scorpio, we've got a fair amount of action in Pisces. The moon is now very much in Pisces. It doesn't matter where you are. Moon is making a conjunction to Saturn in Pisces. And I think that Moon-Saturn conjunction in Pisces is actually pretty good, I think, for you. May not be good for a lot of other people. Can be a real pain, Moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces. But for you, I think it's useful because it allows you to give yourself structure and also to give your genius some structure. Genius sometimes needs structure. The things that you are really good at. It's all very well having abilities and talents. Everyone's got abilities and talents, but usually it doesn't really come to much. What do they say? What do they say about genius? It's something like 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration, all that kind of thing. That it's not enough just to be clever. You have to provide a focus for that cleverness. And I think that with Moon conjunct Saturn, that is something you can do. And so if there's something of a creative nature that you want to get going on, I think that now you very much can put it into action. And I think it sort of builds on what I was saying yesterday. I think I was saying yesterday that your artistic skills are going to be on good form. And I think today they're probably going to be on even better form. I mean, it's not just because of the inspiration and the imagination. It's because with the Moon conjunct Saturn, you can actually make something that is real and lasting and is tangible. And that can be difficult, having an idea, an imagination, and then turning it into something that can actually be seen and felt and experienced. That can be hard work. But you, Scorpio, I think that is very much something you can do. Now, that's one side of what's going on today. I mean, another side might be the fact that you have to engage with other people. Do you want to engage with other people? And are other people useful? That's an important consideration. And there may be a certain clash between what is expected of you and what you feel you need to do. And I think that as far as you're concerned, there's going to be a big gulf between the two. And perhaps you have to make a decision. Do you focus on yourself and what you can do? Or do you water yourself down by taking into account people's expectations? I mean, there's no absolute right answer, but I think from a moral perspective, I think you have to be tough. You don't want to water down your message. You don't want to water down your core abilities to make someone happy, because you'll be undermining yourself. But you certainly need to be aware of outside pressure and how people can perhaps undermine you. I mean, they mean well, I think, but they could still undermine you, and perhaps you have to choose your friends carefully. I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice. I mean, that would particularly apply, for example, if you were working today. You might be able to do something very well, but what you're doing might not be fully appreciated, and you might be asked to change your approach. And then you have to consider, is that something you want to do? Is it worth having a confrontation about it? So I suppose creativity is important, but it also sometimes has a price, and maybe that's a price. The price of creativity is something that you may be actually prepared to pay. But in fact, when you look at authority, I don't know whether authority means anything to you at the moment. When you talk about authority, when I'm talking about authority, I'm not just talking necessarily about employers or people you're supposed to respect, but I'm also talking about organizations, government departments, that kind of thing. Whenever you feel that you're dealing with something or someone that has power over you, whenever that happens, I think that actually you're going to be able to deal with it. I think right now you're very good at dealing with authority and being able to almost manipulate authority figures so that they come around to your way of thinking, and you can actually almost present a vision to people in authority that even if these people in authority have zero imagination, which I suppose they very often do have zero imagination, somehow you can create a vision and an idea about the way things should be that actually makes sense. And I know, for example, if you're trying to pay a utilities bill, there isn't much scope for imagination, but maybe there is scope for imagination. I'm not sure quite how. But also, I think that when dealing with authority figures and government departments, and whether it's local government, central government, whatever, I think you will have a certain amount of good fortune. And if you happen to be involved in government, or you're in a position of authority, then I think you'll be able to assert your authority actually very well, and people will listen to you, and you'll be able to express your vision. There's always scope for vision. It doesn't matter how mundane the situation is. There's always scope for vision. I think you'll be able to assert yourself in a way that is, is surprising. And so there is definitely a sense in which you have power over authority right now. Whether you're in authority, whether you're having to consider other people in authority, I think you do have a certain amount of power in that direction, and I think that's going to make the day a lot easier. I mean, if appropriate, maybe you have nothing to do with government and it's just irrelevant, and you can just do your own thing on your own. Just be the creative artist, and if you want to just be the creative artist and there's no outside pressure, then I think you'll create something completely wonderful. Sagittarius, I think that you're inclined to keep a low profile today. I think that's how you're going to want to manage things. You don't feel that you really want to. You don't feel that you really want to assert yourself. You certainly don't really want to get people's attention, and you might feel that you're best to just stay off people's radar screens, and at least that's how you feel in the first instance. But it may be difficult to adopt such an approach. There is a full moon. Okay, the full moon might be today, it might be tomorrow, but with this full moon, that does highlight the dichotomy between you and your private world and what's happening in the real world, the world of action and attention, and it's just difficult to shut it all out. And perhaps with this full moon, you just have to develop, the right relationship, and perhaps consider, what parts of your existence need to be kept to yourself, need to be kept private, and what parts of your existence need to be out there and interacting with the world. So you have to get the balance right. And I think that if you try very hard to shut out the rest of the world, you may still find that the world finds ways of getting in through the cracks. So I think it's important that you're honest with yourself and honest with the limits of isolation. But still, if you do spend time at home or in a place that you feel very comfortable with, I think that you can create clear structures around yourself. There is this moon conjunct Saturn, and I think that moon conjunct Saturn is about making yourself secure. But what is the point of making yourself secure? The point of making yourself secure is so that you can better deal with the world and its pressures, that you can deal with what people are doing, and be able to handle it when things don't work out as expected. So there is some building here, I think, and you build yourself. You build your foundations so that you can reach out to the public world out there. And as a Sagittarius, you always have an extroverted streak. It may not be particularly apparent right now, but it's there, and it just needs to have a secure foundation. And at the same time, Sagittarius, I think that your skills are on good form. You've got skills that are becoming very obvious to you. I mean, they may be entrepreneurial skills or business skills, and just talent. It is there, and you can actually bring to bear your talent in a very clear way, which will actually have a certain amount of dynamism, but will actually be respected. And that is perhaps a reason why you don't want to completely shut out other people. You don't want to break all contact with the world out there, because you actually do have something to offer, and what you've got to offer may actually be quite substantial. And so give yourself that chance, and don't be afraid of getting criticism. Some people are going to be critical. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, Mercury is moving to an opposition of Saturn. Mercury-Saturn oppositions can be quite critical. You might feel that you're at the receiving end of someone's criticism, someone telling you haven't got it right, and that might bother you, but it's okay. People used sharp language at times. That's the way they are, but it shouldn't upset you. It's just the world in which you happen to be living. So today, Sagittarius, I'm afraid I was a little bit downbeat. I mean, I think that this full moon is not entirely easy, and I will be talking more about this full moon tomorrow. So in a way, my description for you for today is only half the picture, and you shouldn't think about it like everything I say is all about today, which is Tuesday. It does spill into Wednesday, and particularly this full moon is not just about Tuesday, it's also about tomorrow. In fact, it's about the next couple of weeks now. Yeah, so I need to look further and more closely at this full moon and how it impacts Sagittarius, but don't worry, about something I will be doing tomorrow. Capricorn, it's a day when some people are not entirely happy. They do have complaints, and they may feel that things are working against them. But as far as you're concerned, I think that everything's fine, by and large. I think that you are in control, and you give the impression that you're in control. It's like the things you say, the things you do indicate a certain mastery. I mean, not not mastery perhaps in a particularly extravagant way, but you just seem to know what you're doing. And yeah, everything you say provides evidence that you know what you're doing. And if you feel confident, that's the way it should be. Yeah, and other people can benefit from your confidence. Of course, not everyone is going to appreciate it. You may be at receiving end of a little bit of criticism. That's possible because Mercury is making an opposition to Saturn, and that opposition between Mercury and Saturn, it's not exact today, but over the next couple of days it will reach exactitude. And so Mercury opposition Saturn may represent someone, may not be criticism, but someone doing something that's slightly irritating, or perhaps not taking you as seriously as you feel you should be taken not taking you as seriously as you should be. But I think it should be water off a duck's back, or maybe water off a goat's back. I don't know how impacted by water goats are. Well, you've got a water goat, haven't you? That's a sea goat. That's a symbol of Capricorn. I've never really got into that sea goat concept with Capricorn, but maybe there's a sense there that you can deal with a certain amount of a certain amount of uncertainty there, that things don't have to be 100% clear, and perhaps you can sort of go with the blows when things don't go entirely your way. You can respond accordingly, but you'll know how to deal with it. So you're able to communicate very well, and in fact, I think Capricorn, you can actually communicate extremely well, and if there's a particular message that you have that you understand, and it's absolutely clear, there's a single message, a single idea that may be taking up quite a lot of your time today. Now, if you want to communicate this idea, I think you can. Maybe that's when you might start running into some opposition. Not everyone is going to like what you say, but whatever ideas you have, they haven't come from nowhere, and they are planned. You have thought them through, and now perhaps is a time when you need to consider putting these ideas into practice, and you're helped by the fact that Venus is in mutual reception with Saturn. I've gone on and on and on about Venus being in mutual reception by exaltation with Saturn, but it does matter. It means that Venus, in a way, is your ruler temporarily for this week while that mutual reception is in existence. And Venus is in, Venus is in Libra. Venus is in a high-profile part of your chart, and so you really have the chance here to make your ideas known and to stand out as someone who has got something very important to contribute. And you have not got all the time in the world, perhaps, because that Venus mutual reception to Saturn is only operational until the end of a week. Then Venus moves into Scorpio, and that mutual reception breaks. It's not there anymore. Now, there are other things going on. We've got the equinox at the end of a week when the sun moves into Libra. I think actually the sun moving into Libra is actually quite good for you, Capricorn, because it's a time of the year when you can be very focused. But right now you need to really focus on what you can do, and I think you're going to be luckier than average, and the things you do, the things you sort out right now, can have a lasting impact. And yeah, you're going to be helped by the fact that people are going to take you seriously. As I've already said, you are a serious player, you know what you're doing, and you're certainly in a position where people are going to listen to you. And I think in most cases they're going to do what you say. So Capricorn, don't waste time, but you never waste time, do you? I mean, you're a Capricorn, You understand that time is precious, and you also understand that none of us live forever, and you're very earthy, down to earth, and so, be a Capricorn, and you will be fine. Aquarius. Aquarius, the Venus-Jupiter trine, which was exact over the weekend, is still very much in operation. It's only, it's about 3 degrees apart. So I think that you continue to be able to benefit from it. And it does just lift you. It gives you inspiration. And however difficult things are, perhaps in some areas of your life, you just get a sense that overall things are moving your way, that something is looking after you. Venus and Jupiter, they are the two benefics. Venus is the lesser benefic, Jupiter is a greater benefic, and both these planets are trining Aquarius, which is your sign. And so that might be about protection, however difficult things might be. And I'm not saying they are difficult at all, but whatever your concerns, there's probably nothing to be worried about. And if you allow Venus and Jupiter to work for you, I think that they very much will. Now, one concern or one issue that you might have today, with the Moon making a conjunction to Saturn, it might be money. There might be a financial dimension for this. Because Moon conjunct Saturn is not an easy conjunction very often, and it does represent perhaps restriction. And perhaps you're aware that financial realities are preventing you from doing some of the things that you'd really like to do. So that's certainly possible. And we do have a full moon. This full moon is this evening, or it could be tomorrow, depending on where you are. And this full moon could have financial relevance. It perhaps allows you to see what the financial situation actually is, and you see the truth of it. Now, it may be that you see that the financial situation is absolutely fine. It may actually be that you realize that your financial situation is better than you'd imagined. But it could be the other way. You could see that there are certain problem areas that need to be sorted out. But we have to also bear in mind that Venus is trine Jupiter. Venus is this, you've got this fortunate trine. So, by looking at your finances at a time when Venus is also trine Jupiter, that means that you can have a positive and a constructive approach. And I think that, there's a way in which you can really sort things out, and in the end start to feel, a lot more comfortable. And just comfortable about your overall situation and your future prospects. But it's not all about money. This Venus trine Jupiter, it is really very creative. It's still around, and it's this Venus Jupiter trine is starting to weaken, but it's as I said, it's still operational. And I think you really do need to consider what you can do and what makes you special. And sometimes you need a little bit of feedback. I mean, I know that Aquarius likes to be independent-minded and just says it doesn't necessarily need feedback from the rest of the world, but I think perhaps today a little bit of appreciation and praise could go a long way towards not just making you feel good about yourself, but giving you the impetus to take something further. So perhaps, Aquarius, you need to be a little bit open about what you're doing and some of the things that you're working on and where you're making progress. And I think when people hear what you're doing, they will give you some feedback, and I think you're going to get some fairly good feedback. And you might get a little bit of constructive criticism, but that's constructive criticism is just going to actually make you feel actually better about yourself, because you'll know that a few things can be changed. So in that sense, Aquarius, it is a useful time, and when you can really, really tune into what you can do well, and also you can tune into, what your wider contribution to society actually is. So, yeah, don't get sidetracked by small details. Okay, the financial issue is worthy of attention today and tomorrow, but you don't have to be overwhelmed by it, and just focus on who you are and why you are so creative and so talented, and do try to share it with other people, because I think that's going to make you feel better about yourself. And from a cognitive perspective, when you get favorable feedback, that makes you feel good, and that allows you to keep going with what you're doing, and so that allows you to really, in the end, create something that could be really amazing. Pisces. Moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces. I mean, that's probably the main thing going on today. And this conjunction between Moon and Saturn in your sign, I think it's probably a good thing, actually. I mean, the Moon and Saturn in Pisces for you is about being confident. I mean, not confident in a sort of sloppy, optimistic kind of way, but just confident in who you are and in terms of what you're trying to achieve. And you will give the impression of being someone who is focused and who is very serious. I mean, not too serious, but serious about what you're doing. There's nothing trivial about you. And I think that you'll have no difficulty holding your own, even though we have got a full moon. I mean, this full moon is across the main axis of your chart, and so this full moon, I think, does highlight perhaps the differences between yourself and other people. And I think it's always good to see the differences. Yeah, there is a sense in which you and other people have common goals, but there's also a sense in which you are an individual, that you're not part of the pack. You're not just one small fish in a shoal of thousands and thousands of fish. The shoal moves one way, you move that way, and you just move with the shoal. You're not really like that. You're very focused on your identity and what makes you different. And I think that moon conjunct Saturn does highlight that, and it perhaps also highlights your unique contribution. Now, there may be a certain amount of pressure to do things other people's way, because we've got the Sun and Mercury in Virgo, which is your opposite sign. But I think it's pressure that you're going to be able to deal with, and I think that you will have no difficulty really expressing your uniqueness, and yes, being very firm if anyone goes too far. So I think, Pisces, that you'll very much be able to look after yourself. And more than that, I think, Pisces, you can also, to an extent, set the agenda. You kind of know what everyone should be working on. You certainly know what you should be working on, but maybe that relates to other people as well, because you know what matters right now, and you know what can be left until later. And so I think today you're actually very good at prioritizing. And so if you have any position of authority, you'll be able to really explain to people, well, you should be working on this, not on that. And I think, by and large, people will follow your lead, because I think your strength of character with that moon conjunct Saturn will be actually very obvious, though it may not be about other people, and it's maybe about you and what you want to do, and you I think will actually know what needs to be done today. And I think this all fits in with the fact that we also have Venus trine Jupiter. So that Venus trine Jupiter, it was exact over the weekend, but it's still very much there. It's only 3 degrees apart. Jupiter represents you, because Jupiter rules Pisces. Venus is trine Jupiter. And Venus, okay, it might be a planet connected with other people, but it's also the lesser benefic. It is a planet of good luck. And so that Venus allows you to be comfortable with who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And it's a comfort which is, there's a mental comfort there, but I think there's also an emotional comfort. And so you know how to create the future for yourself. You know what the future should be, certainly the short-term future. And once you've made that decision, Pisces, then really nothing should stop you. And yes, I understand the full moon is complicated. This full moon, I don't know when it's going to be exact, depends on your time zone, could be this evening, could be tomorrow. But tomorrow, in my video for tomorrow, I will be talking more about this full moon, because we're not done with this full moon. And so I think we need to get into it in further detail. But, in my video for tomorrow, we'll continue with this conversation. And that's it. That's my forecast for the 12 signs. And I now want to look at today from a perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 50, which is the cauldron. So the cauldron is it's quite a powerful hexagram, and it represents a ceremonial cauldron. It's not some kitchen pot. That's not what it's about. It's where we bring together everything we are, everything we got, and I think there's a certain sense of alchemy with the cauldron, that we're trying to bring all our abilities together. We're trying to structure them. I suppose astrologically, we've got Moon conjunct Saturn today. So if you look at Moon conjunct Saturn in a positive way, you could say Moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces, we're trying to create some structure here. It's all very well having lots of abilities and talents and skills and qualifications, but so what if it's all just a chaotic mess, and we have to sort of put it in the cauldron and create some structure from it. And once we've created this structure, then we'll be able to really make the most of it. And we do have here the fifth line moving. So with the fifth line moving, it does seem that we can be very much helped by other people. That people can help us make the most of what we've got. So, ideally we should be in a fairly sociable environment where there are people we can talk to, we can get help from, discuss our ideas, and that might mean that we might have to perhaps listen to what another person says. It's not necessarily about us being the leader, perhaps letting someone else take the initiative for a bit, but it's just very important that we obviously get the right kind of help, and that there is a sense of trust, because trust really does matter. And trust, the balance has to be right. If we trust people too much, we might lose control. But it does seem that with the right associations, we're going to be really helped in terms of bringing everything together. Now, if no one is available, if we're on our own, it still stands here, because it's still about us performing this act of alchemy, bringing our abilities together because maybe there's a reminder here that things have been a little bit chaotic recently. We've perhaps not taken sufficiently seriously some of our abilities. We've just maybe taken them for granted, or we thought they weren't important, or we'd scattered our abilities into the winds. They've gone left, right, and centre, and there just hasn't been any sort of focus. But perhaps now, with this hexagram, the cauldron, at the time of moon conjunct Saturn, indeed at the time of a full moon, the partial eclipse is perhaps reminding us of what we can do and how we can put things together. Now, because there is a fifth line moving, we move to a different hexagram. And this is maybe where it starts to get a little bit complicated and even contradictory, because the hexagram this moves to is hexagram number 44, which is submission. I mean, at least that's what Greg Winkup calls it, submission. The Wilhelm translation calls it coming to meet. And so it's a reminder that we mustn't take things too far. Yeah, it's good to get people's help and to bring people into our lives to allow us to make the most of our potential, but we have to know when to stop. If we take things too far, then we might lose control. And the whole point was to be in control. Remember, the previous hexagram was 50. It was the cauldron. It was about using our abilities, not worrying about other people's abilities. It's about who we are and what we've got to offer. But there is a danger that if we rely too much on other people, then there might come a point where we do lose control, and where we start having to make compromises, and in the end we have to even submit to another person's authority. So if we get help, whatever help we need to get, I mean, I think there is a situation coming up perhaps today when we do need a bit of help, but if we ask for too much help, we might reach a point where we lose control, or we might find ourselves trusting someone who shouldn't be trusted. So, that's what we should be doing. We should be having people around us who we trust, but someone might slip through the net, someone who, we don't really understand what's going on, and we might find ourselves trusting someone, who could, in the end, undermine us. So, overall, we have to marshal our talents. We have to bring everything together, but we have to be careful how we do it and who we trust, because there's a danger that things could flip. From being in a position where we're very focused on what makes us unique, we could end up having to do things other people's way, perhaps because we trusted people too much. Or, I think this is perhaps more likely, is that we haven't taken ourselves sufficiently seriously. We haven't valued what we do. We haven't regarded it as being special. And because we haven't valued ourselves enough, we've got ourselves into a situation where we rely on someone else. We take the view that someone else perhaps knows more than we do, when of course that's not necessarily true, that someone else is more knowledgeable, more of an expert than us, and as a result we surrender everything, and that would be a terrible shame, but it doesn't have to happen. So let's now look at Donald Trump, and I think there's some interesting things to see when we look at the assassination attempt on Donald, which was on Sunday. And so let's start by looking at the chart of the assassination attempt, and it's in a way it's quite a chart. So here's the chart. I made it 1:30 p.m. That would be on Sunday, September the 15th, 2024, at West Palm Beach in Florida. So I think that Donald was playing golf, and some Secret Service agent saw a barrel of a gun, I think it was sticking out of a bush or something, and I think that was at about 1:30. This is the time it happened. And this chart is kind of amazing because we've got a grand trine in air. And so look at this. We've got Moon at 20 degrees Aquarius. We've got Jupiter at 20 degrees Gemini, and we got Venus at 21 Libra. So Moon trine Jupiter, Moon trine Venus. So a lot of action here. And I kind of feel a bit bad. I should have almost spotted this grand trine in air. Well, I did talk about the grand trine in air over the weekend. And, this is a reminder of how grand trines can work. They can create, a lot of action and a lot of ideas, though, as well. And it's perhaps on the surface it seems a little bit superficial in air, Moon trine Jupiter, Moon trine Venus. But this is a reminder that over the weekend there was a trine between Venus and Jupiter. And Venus and Jupiter is the most fortunate trine in the book, because trine is a fortunate aspect. Venus and Jupiter are fortunate planets, and so that Venus trine Jupiter was fortunate for someone, perhaps. Now, I suppose you look at it from a perspective of the assassin. Would this potentially be a good time to assassinate someone? Not that there's ever a good time to assassinate someone, but you would have thought with the Moon applying to a trine of Jupiter, Moon applying to a trine of Venus, that's... I suppose if you're trying to involve yourself in a venture, I suppose that kind of looks good. But, when you're trying to assassinate the former president of the United States, you have to consider... fate. The universe knows when Trump's number is up, and clearly Trump's number was not up on Sunday. Now, a couple of other things about this chart. Look at Neptune. Neptune was on the descendant, and so there's a certain amount of subterfuge there. I suppose you could say, well, that is someone hiding in a bush. So I think that is certainly one way of looking at it. But as we know, this was a chart of an unsuccessful assassination attempt, which makes one wonder what was it doing to Donald. Now, if you know about Donald's chart, you will see that 20-degree Jupiter at 20 degrees Gemini is quite important. So looking at Trump's chart. Here's Trump's chart, and then we'll put the assassination attempt on there. So we'll put the attempt. Okay, so we've got Donald Trump's chart in the middle, and we've got the assassination attempt on the outer wheel. And Donald Trump has his sun at 22 degrees 56 Gemini. And he has his north node at 2046 Gemini. So he's got a sun-north node conjunction. And he also has his Jupiter at 1727 Libra. So he's got Jupiter trine the sun, Jupiter trine the north node. So he's got an air trine in his natal chart. So it's kind of not surprising, is it? That this grand trine in air signs really had a big impact on him. So Jupiter at 20 degrees 46 Gemini was conjunct his north node. The moon transiting Jupiter at the time, so that was how he experienced it, because we noticed Jupiter on his north node at the time of a debate, and now it's hit him again. And then the moon at 20 degrees 5 Aquarius was also hitting his north node and hitting his sun as well. And then you've got Venus at 21 Libra, fairly close to his Jupiter, and trine his sun, trine his north node. So this grand trine in air signs at the time of the assassination attempt was hitting Trump's own Sun Jupiter trine, North Node trine. And I have to say that it seems to me very fortunate for him. He had just been recovering from the aftermath of the debate, where I think most people say that he lost. I mean, I'm not saying it as an absolute fact. Maybe, I was accused. Actually, someone said I was watching too much CNN a couple of days ago. I mean, I don't watch CNN. I don't follow what CNN says. But I suppose if you follow the mainstream narrative, certainly it was a bad debate. You can agree with me, disagree with me, whatever. But I think that this was incredibly fortunate for him, and I think the astrology shows it. That it was a time, when he was able to sort of move the narrative beyond the debate, and I'm guessing it's going to help in terms of him becoming re-elected US president. I do believe he will be re-elected in November, but I think that this is perhaps just what he needed to move things on. And so that's what was going on at the time of the shooting. Well, there wasn't a shooting, the attempted shooting, and I suppose one should look at a couple of things. His lunar return beforehand. I'm not saying, by the way, that anything is happening on his lunar return, by the way. I'm not saying that it's spectacular at all. But this was his lunar return. This was a moon return to where it was when he was born at the time of, on September the 11th, which was the day after the debate. And so at the time of Donald's lunar return, Saturn was, I've set this for the place he was born. That's the way I like to do my returns. I didn't go for the place he was at the time of the return. But Saturn was exactly on his descendant. And so Saturn on his descendant, there's an indication there that this could have been a very difficult lunar return for him. Because of Saturn on a descendant, his enemies are strong. And it seems that the lunar return has coincided with this assassination attempt, which has, as I said, completely changed the focus. So, yeah, Saturn at 1547 Pisces, right on the descendant. I also, by the way, did a phase angle return for him for September. Let's get the right phase angle. I did a phase angle for Sunday, by the way. Phase angle, by what I mean by a phase angle, and I've set this for Jamaica, New York, where he was born. Every day I looked at where, every day there is a moment where the sun and the ascendant have the same angular aspect as they had at birth. So it's kind of like a return for every day. And so for September the 15th, so this would have been probably set for just over an hour before the shooting. There was a time when the sun and the ascendant had the same angular separation as they had at birth. And look at that. Look at the IC 1530. There was Saturn was exactly on the IC at 15 Pisces. So this was a time of real danger for him. You could say that Uranus was fairly close to the descendant as well, and that Saturn on the IC is also picked up by the lunar return. So going back to the lunar return, there you had the Saturn. Sorry, not that one. That's a lunar return relocated to. So that's the one. Well, there's, you see Saturn right on the descendant. So the returns are indicating that something really bad, but somehow he escaped. Again, it wasn't his time wasn't up. And then we have Ryan Wesley Routh, and we do have his time of his date of birth. and as I said, I got that from a North Carolina Department of Adult Corrections, because he had had a run-in with them a long time ago, but his date of birth was still up there. Maybe the North Carolina Department of Corrections has got it wrong. I doubt it. And there's only surely there's only one Ryan Wesley Routh, who was 58 years old. And so here is his chart. Don't have his time of birth. I don't have his place of birth. But I've gone for Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm not saying he's born in Greensboro, North Carolina, but it doesn't matter, because I don't have his time. I don't have his time of birth. So we're just looking at the flat chart. So yeah, he was born on February the 18th, 1966, and that means that he was probably an Aquarius, but not definitely an Aquarius. So there's his sun, and so if he'd been born very, very late in the day, he'd have his sun in Pisces. So in fact, not actually very late. I mean, there's probably, what's that, 36? I mean, there's probably off the top of my head, about 60% chance that he was an Aquarius and a 40% chance that he was a Pisces. So actually, we don't really know what his star sign is. And so here's his chart. I mean, it's a somewhat difficult chart. There, it's got sort of Mars-Saturn conjunction, and he's got Mars, Pluto, Saturn, Pluto. So Mars-Saturn conjunction, this is someone who is capable of some very dark thoughts, I suppose. Life is frustrating for him, and there's a lot to get angry about. And he was born in 1966 at the time of the Uranus-Pluto conjunction. So he had Mars-Saturn conjunction, opposition Uranus-Pluto. It's not a great life, is it? Particularly what we know about him. I mean, he's had run-ins with the law before, and now he's arrested after sort of trying to kill Donald Trump, and I assume, and that's a charge at least. And Mars-Pluto opposition, is quite obsessive, isn't it? Someone who is capable of obsession. As we know, he got obsessed about Ukraine and thought that America should throw everything it had into supporting Ukraine, or rather to sort of continue with this proxy war that America is having with Russia. But I don't know if he gets these subtleties, but he has though Black Moon Lilith at 20 Aquarius, and he has Jupiter at 21 Gemini, which is kind of amazing if you think about it, isn't it? Because it so links up with Trump's chart and the events that were happening at the time. So in terms of what was going on for Ryan Wesley Routh when he attempted to shoot Donald Trump, or at least that's what we assume what he was doing. So he had the moon. The moon was at 2005 Aquarius, right on his true Black Moon Lilith, and Jupiter was at 2026. So there's that Moon Jupiter trine. So again, Jupiter was on his Black Moon Lilith. But also look at his Jupiter. He has his Jupiter at 21 Gemini. So he had his Jupiter return, and they very much emphasized that Jupiter. So it was his Jupiter return, and so the moon was trine Jupiter. So his Jupiter was really picked up. This is what his Jupiter was all about. It activated his Jupiter. Again, we don't have his full time of birth, but you can see where this is going, can't you? Because if we compare if we compare Trump's chart with Ryan Routh's chart, I mean, this is possibly not something that Ryan Routh wants to consider, but I would argue that if you look at, let's put Trump there and Ryan Routh on, there's Trump's chart. So Ryan Routh's Jupiter is right on Trump's Sun and on his Trump's North Node, and it's also trine Jupiter. So this link, it completely links with Trump, and so it's almost like Ryan Routh's historic mission. You know, what was his mission? What was it all about? It may well be that Trump's Trump's campaign for the White House was getting a bit rocky, and he was perhaps, with this debate, wasn't looking good. So it's almost like Ryan Routh's historic life mission was to give Trump's campaign for the White House a last-minute boost. He was almost there to facilitate Trump's re-election. You could argue this. And then he's done his job. Job done. And so you have Routh's Jupiter on his Sun. That means that Trump benefits from Ryan Routh being alive. Trump benefits from Ryan Routh's botched attempt to assassinate him, and he even benefits from look at Ryan Routh with his Jupiter trine the Black Moon Lilith. All the sort of the darkness in Ryan Routh that was encouraging, got him involved in, worrying about Ukraine and Trump, and it seems that really Trump really did, he did benefit from this. Now, going back to Ryan Routh, some of Ryan Routh's transits at the time, there is another transit going on that Ryan Routh had his Mars at 1518 Pisces and Saturn at 1724 Pisces. So Saturn was exactly conjunct Ryan Routh's Mars when he did this assassination attempt. So Routh has a Mars-Saturn conjunction, which I suppose could be the assassin, the killer, Mars-Saturn being about death. But Saturn on the Mars-Saturn conjunction, that was a time where he felt he had to act. And I suppose he did act, but Saturn conjunct Mars, and I suppose he will be, assuming he's guilty, and assuming they've got the right man, assume they have done, I suppose he'll be in prison for a very long time. I think it's quite a serious crime, a federal crime, trying to kill a former president. I don't think that's something that's looked seen in a good light, and I suspect if and when Trump gets elected, I don't think that he'll be giving Ryan Routh a pardon. And finally, I just wanted to consider this Ukraine issue. Why did Ryan Routh get so obsessed about Ukraine? Okay, a lot of people have got obsessed about Ukraine, but looking around, when I go for walks around the neighborhood, a couple of years, when the Ukraine war started, I could see Ukraine flags all over the place. Now I only see one Ukraine flag in this place. So generally the enthusiasm for Ukraine has gone down, and of course we don't know exactly why Ryan Routh wanted to kill Trump, whether I assume it had something to do with Ukraine, maybe it didn't. But so looking at how Ukraine, so here's Ryan Routh's horoscope, and here I put the horoscope of the Ukraine on the outer wheel, and Ukraine has its sun at because Ukraine got its independence on August the 24th, has its sun at 0 degrees Virgo. So its sun at 0 degrees Virgo was actually opposition Ryan Routh's sun. So that might have had something to do with it. Also, Ukraine has its sun at 0 degrees 56 Virgo. Now, Ryan Routh had his North Node at 0 degrees Gemini, 0 degrees Sagittarius. So in fact, he had the Sun squaring a North Node. And so in a way, that North Node Sun square in Ryan Routh's horoscope, Ukraine's Sun feeds into it. So Ukraine's Sun is square his North Node, square his South Node. And so I think that that might help explain what was going on. It might give some logic to why he was so obsessed with this country, and so obsessed that maybe that led him to wanting to shoot the US, a former US president. Anyway, those are some thoughts on the assassination attempt. I think my view is that the astrology was in a way pretty incredible, particularly that grand trine over the weekend, and you had that grand trine feeding into Donald's Sun North Node conjunction trine Jupiter, and it also picked up on the Jupiter of Ryan Wesley Routh, and it almost just seems to have a fated sense to it, that this was an event that in a way kind of had to happen, and it's helped Donald get over the mini crisis after his debate performance, and I suppose it opens us up to the next phase of the campaign. And I suppose just remember, Venus moves out of Sagittarius. Venus moves out of Libra beginning of next week. Venus moves out of Libra into Scorpio, and I do think that that's not going to be good for Kamala. I think that she's benefited from Venus in mutual reception to Saturn, and I think that when that Venus by exaltation, when that Venus-Saturn mutual reception breaks up, I think that perhaps we're already going to start to see the full picture, and maybe that's when it's going to become apparent that Kamala is going to lose. But we'll have to see. And anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. If you enjoyed the video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it, and if you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.